to Vicky now.
Thank you very much for that, and it's really exciting to hear about employees on boards. And you were saying about us needing to ensure that it's their BBC and that they need to believe in it and that we need to build out. So what more could the BBC do to persuade audience who may not see it as relevant to think that the BBC is there for them?
So the BBC has done some really good research on this, that there are certain audiences that they don't reach in particularly large numbers who don't see themselves reflected in that story. I think the most obvious of that is young people, by which I don't mean that young people don't watch or engage with the BBC. I mean, I've got an 11-year-old who watches Newsround every day and uses Bite Size, albeit I know it's a bit controversial. But there's, you know...
Different opinions.
There are rightly different views in the democracy. But, you know, the new leadership team is very keen to do more to reach young people and to make good programming for young people and to work with other public service broadcasters who already do this very well, like Channel 4 and Channel 5 as well. I think, though, that for me, the most stark challenge that we have as a country is that where you live in this country will very much depend on how you feel, whether you feel that this country is working for you, whether you feel that this country is getting better. And far too many of us, depending on where we live in the country, don't see ourselves reflected in the story we tell ourselves about ourselves as a nation. I think that's partly been because of the changes that we've seen to ITV, which really used to tell that story from the ground up in every nation and region. It still does a very good job on lots of things, but I think there has been a gap that has emerged that under Tim Davies' leadership, the BBC has started to fill. And so the discussion that Rupert and I were just having about structures, we have looked at whether to bring back regional boards in the BBC, and that's one option that's under consideration. I'm not messianic about particular structures, but what I do want to see is commissioning power devolved to every nation and region so that those nations and regions are deciding for themselves what content is made. My counterpart in the Scottish Government, Angus Robertson, raised with me a little while ago the instance of traitors, where people were bussed in to Scotland from London in order to make distinctly Scottish content and then bussed back out again. Now, you know, I guess the message to broadcasters from those of us who don't live in London and the South East is that we can see you, and we can see when this is not distinctly Scottish or Northern or you know, Eastern region content. And we want to see our lives, our stories, our communities, our accents, our experiences reflected in the broadcasting that we have. The BBC does do a very good job at that, but far too much of its commissioning power is still held in Broadcasting House, in my view.
So do you think its current strategy of building creative hubs in Salford, Cardiff and Digbeth is actually doing enough to bring about that economic growth and also connecting better with audiences and actually connecting with local people in terms of employment opportunities within the BBC?
I think they've made an astonishingly good start. I think it was a core part of Tim's time as Director General to build out that footprint. And I think Matt Britton talked to you about the stuff that he'd seen happening in Cardiff, which is genuinely mind-blowing, the way that the BBC has been able to be the catalyst for a golden age of programming in Cardiff and the surrounding area. But I'd like to see us go much further and much faster. In particular, I'd like to see the commissioning power devolve to the nations and regions, not least because there are a lot of brilliant indies in this country. I mean, he talked, I think, to the committee about Bad Wolf. But there are lots of brilliant indies who really do drive that locally rooted storytelling with universal appeal that every major streamer and investor is on the hunt for. Those indies have struggled a lot in recent years, and one of the reasons that they struggle is because if you want to be commissioned as an indie, you have to try and convince somebody hundreds of miles away in the capital city that you've got a great story. you have to get on a train to London. Oftentimes your meeting will be cancelled at your own expense. You have to bid and pitch for that commission, and then you have to hope that somebody is enlightened enough to understand the value of that story in a part of the country that feels and sounds and is very different. And I think we're missing a trick here. And I think the BBC has always been at its best when it's been a first mover that has helped to unlock things that others then step into. And I think this is one area where we could do far more.
So with that in mind, do you think that the headquarters of the BBC should remain in London?
I've long thought it should shift north. I think it would be one of those moments where the BBC showed itself to be the first mover. Bit like the work that was done at Media City all those years ago, that really has been a catalyst for a completely different broadcasting ecosystem, opportunities opening up for people across the country, different mindset and way of thinking, more internal challenge within the BBC. I think back to the sort of glory days of ITV and when Granada Television in the Northwest, which you know well, I know, was in its ascendancy. And it was the place, that and local newspapers were the place where working class kids from towns like Wigan and Bury could get their entry point into the television industry and go on to become some of the best in the world. Now, I think the BBC still does a lot of that, but I think for most young people growing up in towns like mine, those opportunities just don't exist anymore. And I think we should be ashamed as a nation about that. And this charter is one of the ways that we can set that right.
Will this be something that you push for?
So I would be very keen to see the centre of gravity in the BBC move to Media City. And I can't really see any compelling reason why not.